Welcome to Friday. It's April 23rd, 2021. Just one more full week ago into the month of April. And I think a lot of folks would like to wave April goodbye, as we all know how cold it's been. But it is warmer this weekend. We are sticking to our promises that warmer weather will be coming our way. It's just not going to be a perfect weekend. There are going to be some things about the weekend that won't be so good, but it's going to be a lot better than it's been. Now, we do have a frontal system that's traversing the region today. It's not much of a front, but we have seen some showers overnight and this morning across parts of Montana, Idaho, parts of northern Wyoming. This front will move southeast, affecting the rest of the region as the day wears on. Even a couple of rumbles of thunder could be possible before the day's over, but it's not much of a front. It's going to be warmer this weekend, but as we've been mentioning over the last couple of days, there's going to be some wind, especially on the western slope of Colorado, across Utah, across south central and western areas of Wyoming. So not a perfect weekend, but much better than it's been. Western areas of the forecast region will have some showers this weekend. We're going to see Pacific moisture move in. So places like Yellowstone and Jackson and parts of the Pacific Northwest, there's going to be some showers moving in, especially into the higher terrain, but we'll stay up into that higher terrain for the most part. A system is going to arrive early in the week. It does not look like it's going to be a big storm, but it does look like some rain and snow showers and a little bit of thunder will be moving into the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe of next week, but then it's going to warm up behind it. So it's looking a lot more typical for this time of year. Also, at the end of today's podcast, two things I'm going to bring up. One is we've had some recent solar activity that is going to be interesting to watch this weekend and early next week. And also, a brand new solar cycle study has just come out by some pretty famous solar scientists that will show you some of the results from that study, which I think you're going to find really interesting. First of all, let's take a look at what we have coming our way today. Here is the trough. Small, not very well put together, and quick moving. But it is going to slide through the region like this, then into the Midwest this weekend. Here's the high pressure coming in behind it for the upcoming weekend. This is what the moisture looks like through the next 48 hours. So you can see nothing really heavy, but a little bit more in the way of widespread shower activity over central and southern Montana, far northern Wyoming. Then right here, these are basically your garden variety showers and isolated thunderstorms that'll pop up with the front later today through evening, but that'll be about all. By the weekend and into Monday, we have this southwest wind aloft. A system along the west coast will be dragging in warmer air in from the desert states. That's why Saturday gets warmer. Sunday and Monday are the warmest days. We're actually going to see some rain in parts of California and the Pacific Northwest with this system, and that's why there's going to be some shower activity moving into this area here by late Sunday and into early Monday. The strong temperature gradient, this gradient of strong temperature change and pressure change, will lead to the windy conditions here in the Great Basin and in this area here as we get into Saturday and Sunday. But we're driving in a much warmer air mass into the region. Now by Monday, you can see that moisture from the west coast is pushing in. So as we get into the Wasatch Front, into the Sierra Nevada of California, into Yellowstone here, Jackson, western areas of Montana, it starts to get wet Monday. Now east of the divide, just starting to see some showers developing by late Monday. So east of the divide, it's going to be more like a Tuesday, Wednesday situation, while it's going to be a late Sunday, Monday situation for you folks in those areas there. We talked about the wind. We have been talking about the wind over the last couple of days affecting the western slope, south central and western areas of Wyoming along Interstate 80. So areas that normally aren't as windy are going to get the wind this weekend. And notice east of the Continental Divide, the wind actually isn't really all that bad for the eastern plains of Wyoming and northeastern Colorado and western Nebraska. But if you're going to be driving I-70, I-80, I-15, you're going to be encountering some strong and gusty winds throughout the course of the weekend. This is especially true Sunday. I think Sunday into Monday is where you're going to see the strongest winds there. Next week, this is how next week starts. We have that trough along the west coast get a push inland, and this is going to bring a disorganized low into the region. So it's not a very well put together storm, but I do anticipate showers and thunderstorms and cooler weather here and some mountain snow as well as we get into late Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week. But behind it, high pressure builds in warmer air as well. So although it will cool off by the early parts of next week, the second half of next week into next weekend, into early May, looks warmer. So we're not going to see that Canadian connection over the next week to 10 days. So it'll be more like it should be as we head into the last week of April. Now let's get to the solar activity. Now we had mentioned earlier this week that we had some sunspots picking up, 3 active sunspot regions right now. Well, over the last 24 hours, this area right here, this sunspot, put out what's called a coronal mass ejection, basically a solar flare. And it's a fairly high magnitude, the strongest one we've seen in a while. You expect more of these to occur as the solar activity picks up again and you get more sunspots. And actually, NOAA is predicting a moderate G2 magnetic storm to be impacting the globe as we get into starting April 25th. So basically, we're expecting this coronal mass ejection to affect the Earth beginning on Sunday. That means, according to their impacts here on what a G2 geomagnetic storm will do, is you may have some impacts on power systems, spacecraft operations. Folks who are amateur radio operators may hear and notice some impacts. And if you watch for the aurora borealis, well, the aurora borealis could very well get into the lower 48 states as we get into that Sunday, Monday, Tuesday time frame. Now, for at least the western United States, I think we've got a cloud problem as we get into late Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday if we do get the aurora to form. Don't worry, there's more opportunities coming. But this is the first geomagnetic storm that's coming our way, and it's one that we haven't seen one of this magnitude in quite a while. Now I want to get into a new paper that just was released this week that talks about trying to predict these solar cycles and trying to predict how intense they're going to be. There is a lot more study and a lot more research in the sun-climate interactions and these other interactions like these coronal mass ejections on how we understand these solar cycles really fits into how we can make long-term projections in a lot of things. And this is something that unfortunately gets a little controversial because it goes into some areas that people, well, it just gets uncomfortable for people to talk about because it does get into long-term and long-range climate projections. But this is a very interesting paper that has come out using artificial intelligence to do what's called hindcasting, which is try to predict what the solar cycles have been in the past and how that may impact what the climate cycles are looking like going forward. Now, we've been talking during this podcast for the last year or so about the fact that we just got through solar minimum. We're just about ready to go into our next solar cycle, and the intensity of these solar cycles play a role in the amount of cosmic rays that impact the Earth, which can in turn, again, controversial, debated, whether or not those cosmic rays impact the climate. They may or may not, but there's some pretty convincing evidence that they do. And these fluctuations in these solar cycles can lead to really a lot of different things with our climate, coronal mass ejection, sunspot activity, and everything else. And what's interesting about this paper, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to get this paper here at the end of the podcast, so stay tuned. But what they did is they went back and they looked at observed sunspots and what should have been the sunspots in the solar cycles. And what we're showing, going all the way back to 1750, are these maximums and minimums of solar activity with the solar cycles. And what we tend to see is that we tend to have these periods where we have these maximums, as you should see, totally natural, but these minimums have been really important because these minimum periods tend to coincide with major fluctuations in global climate patterns. Again, controversial, shouldn't be, but it is. There's a lot of different folks who have lots of different opinions on this, and this is just one opinion. Do your own research. Look at contradictory information out there because it's out there. But this paper really is very interesting. What it does is by using the past, using artificial intelligence, what it's predicting is it's predicting that the next 3 solar cycles will be continued very weak. This is the one that we just got done with. Here's the next solar cycles, the next 3. And remember, these solar cycles go about 11 years. So if you add up 11 years, 3 solar cycles, you're talking about 30 to 40 years of time. So going all the way up to the year 2050, their technique that they use to predict solar activity is indicating that the next 3 solar cycles will be very weak. And if you go back and look, if they're right, if their projections are right, this upcoming minimum will be just as strong as the one at the turn of the century, not as strong as what's called the modern minimum. This is when it was very cold across the globe. It's not predicting one to be that strong, but it's predicting one to be, the strongest in over 100 years. So this is really important. So as you take a look at this, and if we look at our new solar cycles coming up, they may not be strong solar cycles, and that could have some impacts. Again, there's folks who disagree, but there's also been papers published before this one which are suggesting the same thing. So watch the sun, watch the solar cycle, and see what happens here. This is a long-term situation. We're talking about something over the next 10 to 40 years of time, but we'll be able to measure this and we'll be able to see if their prediction is right as we go into this next solar cycle. If you're interested, email me, podcast@dayweather.com. I can send you the release about this paper, and I can also send you the paper, which is, as you would expect, very technical, but some of you might be interested in looking at those documents to have an understanding of what they're presenting. Thanks for listening and watching the Day Weather Podcast. We'll talk to you on Monday.